All right, virtual students, it's still not start time. It's not even 10 a.m., but there's a technical issue with the video. If you could just be patient, we'll be starting probably within about 5 minutes. There's still some participants that hadn't signed on yet. Hopefully you'll get signed on in time to get credit for this, but we are doing session 14 and 15 today, if I'm not mistaken, according to the syllabus. So we're on page 259. We're doing 14 and 15 today, doing 14 right now. Closing the real estate transaction. Our learning objectives right here. We're going to describe the steps required to achieve conveyance of clear and marketable title. Talk about, explain RESPA, which we've already talked about, but we'll hint at it again. And the Mortgage Disclosure Improvement Act. We'll talk about buyer and seller debits and credits. And then let's turn the page. Guys, there's only 21 chapters in the book. Today we're doing 14 and 15, so our time is near. And if you hadn't been studying like you should, you need to start now. This is all doable. It just requires the repetition. If you don't get it, you ain't gonna make it. Page 260. There's not a lot in this class that's earth-shattering to you. It's a culmination of efforts from a lot of people. And a closing, think about all the people that are involved, the mortgage lender, the realtors, the home warranty company, the title insurance company. Often there was a repair person involved. You got a closing attorney, a lot of folks. And we don't get paid until the deal closes. So it is a good day for everybody. You'll tend to notice once you get in the business that closings tend to take place at the end of the month. Why? Because it lessens the amount of prepaid interest that a purchaser has to pay. And the system has always been set up to lessen the cash requirements from the buyer. Anytime we can lessen the cash requirements for the buyer, it helps them buy our real estate. So, I feel strongly about what I'm about to tell you. You should attempt to attend closings with your buyer. You're not required to. There's a place in here in just a page or two. We're going to talk about that. You're not required to, but you should. Did any of y'all ever get lost in a grocery store as a child? It was frightening. I got lost one time in Kmart downtown, and I was scared as hell for about 20 minutes. I don't know why my brain just searched for that experience as an analogy, but buyers and sellers, no matter how old they are, whether they're 20 or they're 50, for the majority of people, they've not experienced a real estate transaction, if not many in their life. So they feel like that inside, that child is lost. And your presence there is comforting to them. They don't know what to say, what to do. They don't want to look stupid. So you're kind of like their mama and their daddy. You make them feel comfortable about things. And we translate that feeling to favor. Whenever someone makes me feel warm and comfortable, I manifest, I interpret that as I like you and I want them to like me. Because, you know, I teach my post-license students, I say, listen, we want our buyers and customers to take ownership of us. Have you ever noticed we all take ownership of other professionals, doctors? You know, we refer to my doctor. I was talking to my attorney, talking to my dentist, went to my accountant. I want them to refer to me as my realtor. I want them to own me throughout their life. I want them to have that feeling when they walk away from me. And so there are a lot of things on an unconscious level and a conscious level psychologically that we can do to cause people to have favor with us and have those feelings. Now, you may end up being a hot shot, a good salesman. And if you've got, sometimes you can have 4, 5, 6 closings at the end of the month. Make sure you schedule them to where they're not stacked, to where you can attend them. All right. So, you know, I may have one on the 27th in the morning and one on the afternoon of the 27th, one on the 28th in the morning, one on the 20th. Just always be mindful of when you have set a closing appointment for the end of the month and try to stack them to where you can attend them. But there may be a situation where you cannot attend a closing. You know, you just can't avoid it. You got a doctor's appointment, you got to be out of town. You've got 3 closings scheduled at the same time that day. You make sure, damn it, someone's going to be there representing you. Okay. I always had a friend or 3 in the office that I exchanged favors with. If I had a showing on a Wednesday night and I couldn't make that showing, I had a friend or 2 that I could call and say, will you pick the ball up tonight and show my peoples? With the understanding that I would do the same for them down the road. I don't know how you work in life, but I work by virtue of working with others, you know, and boy, it's like greasing the rails in life. You can't tote the load your damn self the whole way. So, and then sometimes you ain't got a friend that can go to the closing with you, you know. But if you do, if you can't attend the front, I'm going to tell my friend. And when I tell my friend, I'm going to say, listen, I want you to call my buyers. I want you to call my sellers and say, Mark told me to call you to tell you today that he's not going to be able to attend the closing. But he said, by God, it's important that somebody that loves him is there to attend the closing because he wants you to be taken care of and looked after. Mark made damn well sure that I understood that. Because they hear that and it makes them puff up thinking, yeah, old Mark, he knows who his people is. He's taking care of me, man. You know, feels good when you got somebody looking out for you like that. Feel so strongly about it. And then if I can't find somebody in the office, I'm going to ask my broker. I'm going to say, broker, my people is your people. And I go to all my people's closing. It means that much to me. And I can't find a friend to do it. Will you go to my closing? But my point, I think you get my point. Have somebody there representing you if you're not able to go to the closing. But on page 260, this chapter is fairly easy. It's called Closing the Real Estate Transaction. So like I said, this is a culmination of a lot of effort from many professionals. And you'll find yourself walking around on air in the last week of the month. That's when you're putting the money in the bank. The buyer's concerns we're going to go over. and we're gonna go over the seller's concerns again for that day, closing day. The buyer's concerns are not that big of a deal. You see a bulleted list. The buyer's concerns as far as the closing day are the result of any inspections. Why? Because sometimes the negotiations and the lending process is determined upon the result of inspections. The lender may be having inspections done to satisfy their needs, and then the buyer and seller, they negotiated some repairs. The second bullet, the survey. The third bullet, the title evidence. This is where we're making sure that we're getting marketable title if I'm the seller, and that I'm conveying marketable title if I'm the buyer. And then the last bullet is a lease, for rightfully so. Guys, investment properties are sold with tenants remaining in them. It's the best kind of property to buy as an investor. Man, to buy an investment, wouldn't you like to find an office building for sale and you're in the market for such? Would you rather buy an empty office building or a full office building? You'd rather buy a full office building. I ain't got no downtime trying to find tenants. I got income coming in the door. But if I'm an investor buying a property with a tenant in it, I want to see the rights of the tenant in it. So I want to see the lease of anybody that is going to remain on the property. None of this is shocking. The final property inspection at the bottom of the page, you see there in italics, we typically refer to as the final walkthrough. Purpose of the final walkthrough is very elementary. You, the buyer, want to see the property before the closing to make sure it's in the same shape it was when you fell in love with it about a month ago. You want to make sure that any repairs that were negotiated have been done to your satisfaction. When the walkthrough takes place, tends to be regional. In Alabama, we tend to do the final walkthrough the day before closing. I know I've heard and the only reason I know things like I know when I reference other states is just talking to professionals over cocktails at national conventions. You're sitting at a table with realtors from Nebraska all over, and how do y'all do it? How do y'all do it? But sometimes the final walkthrough on the day of the close, it's really a formality. So who gives a damn when it takes place? It's just, it does tend to be a custom wherever you go, as far as when. It is not an opportunity, however, in the walkthrough for the buyer to discover they didn't see something the first time and think that they can stop crap and open up negotiations again. And sometimes you have to make that point. On page 261, this is actually a form that you would see in a mortgage loan application file where a buyer is getting an FHA loan. It's just information. It is not necessary for anything. For some reason, the consumer tends to think an appraisal and a home inspection are the same thing. This form explains that they are not. The appraisal is not meant to notify people of what is wrong with the property. They are just meant to tell you what the property is worth in the condition that it is in. The home inspection is the one, inspectors are the one who don't let people know stuff's wrong. And, the 5 areas that a home inspector focuses on is plumbing, electrical, roof, heating and air, and structural. Turn the page. Survey, in the modern day, the lender will try to save the buyer some money on a survey. If there's been a survey provided, or if there's been a recent survey of the property within 5 years, more often than not, the lender's not going to require a survey. So if you've done a refi or a recent purchase, and you got a survey less than 5 years old, they won't make you pay for one. But I would want one. I want to be able to catch the fact that my neighbor's driveway is 14 inches over onto my property, running down along my property about 26 feet. You know, title evidence. This is, well, if you can recall, we had the conversation when we talked about the abstractor, putting together the abstract, which is a chain of title and a report on anything that they might have found negatively in the courthouse records. And as a result of their work, they will issue a certificate of title to the mortgage company, thus giving the mortgage company the peace of mind to cut the check. A lot of this is going over things that we have learned about already. I know it, you don't. So it ain't gonna hurt your fanny to read it again for the repetition. So page 263, we talk about seller's concerns. It's simpler than the purchaser's concerns. They just want their money, honestly. They interrupt their train of thought right here by talking about the real estate professional's role at the closing. I just talked about that. You're not required to go to the closing with your people, but I recommend you do. And if you're not able to, I recommend you have someone in your behalf attend the closing. And you know, the same conversation when you turn the page to lender's interest in closing, same thing. They're not required to go to the closing. But gee whiz, if anybody should be at the closing, it's the representative of the lender. We call them a loan officer. Sometimes you hear people refer to them as an originator in the business. The reason they should go is, first of all, understand this. After your buyer leaves you and then they go work with a mortgage professional, they have a rapport with the mortgage professional as much as they had one with you. They have to spend a lot of time with a mortgage professional in person, on the phone, going back and forth. So they got that same feeling about their mortgage professional that they do you, the parent feeling, you know, lost, needing somebody to make them feel good. And really, the mortgage loan professional's presence at the closing is more important than yours because they can actually put fires out. You know, the closing attorney could say, oops, we can't finish this closing. I'm missing a document. The loan officer can say, well, let's press pause on this. My office is 3 minutes from here. I'll be back in 7. And they can go get it and come back and the closing take place, you know? The closing attorney may say, I'm missing this. I need this. Again, I think you understand the point I'm trying to make. A mortgage loan officer can do a lot more at the closing if bumps come up in the road than the realtor can. But guys, when you get in the business, you're going to hear realtors tell you a lie. You know, we talk about steering, the fact that steering is illegal. If you're steering your people to one professional because you have a kickback arrangement. So when you get in the business, you're going to hear knuckleheads go, you can't just recommend one mortgage professional. You have to give at least 3 names. You'd be steering if you didn't. That's a damn lie that's been told for 50 years. Now, 1978 was when RESPA first came out, and I was 12. I wasn't in the business. But in 1978, when RESPA came out, the government said to realtors, they said, give 3 names when you recommend a mortgage professional to dispel any notion someone might have that you have a kickback arrangement. Did you hear the second part of that statement? So if you don't have a per deal kickback arrangement with any other, you can steer your people to one person. In fact, I think it's your job to steer people to one person. When you get in the business, you're going to get married in a business sense to one mortgage professional. Okay. I don't know why I did that. Mortgage professional. We know. You got to get married in a business sense to a mortgage. They're going to be your go-to. That's who you send business to. But you're always going to have a side woman or a side dude, whoever you want to side. I call it second string. That's a better analogy. cleaner and less sinful. First string quarterback, second string quarterback. I only go to second string when first string's injured. All right. So I'm gonna have a first string mortgage professional. That's who I'm gonna send all my business to. The only time I'm gonna send business to second string is if first string's out of town on vacation and the hospital sick. Because you want your buyers going to someone that is trustworthy, that has integrity, that has competitive rates and costs. Do you understand me? That shares your work ethic, because they will be a reflection of you. Don't forget that. And then you're going to get, have a second string, a go-to. This is very important. I hope to God you remember this. How am I going to meet these people, Mr. Yarber? Just like you've met anybody in life over time. We're very social creatures, y'all. We look for excuses to gather and drink cocktails, mimosas, have dances, Super Bowl parties, award banquets, lunch and learns. We love to get together. If you're a social creature, you're about to go to heaven. And all these people that depend on us for their referrals to make a living, closing attorneys, home warranty, title insurance, stagers, mortgage people, etc. They attend all our social functions because they're trying to rub up on us, trying to get to know us. They try to network with us. So you'll meet them that way. Plus, mortgage professionals will come into your office weekly and do little sales presentations. So you'll have many opportunities to meet mortgage professionals. But I do want you to remember this conversation. You don't want willy-nilly your buyer to end up with just, who are you? Give me their number so I can call them. I want to know who the hell I'm working with. Guys, I bet a lot of y'all like me, sports fans. I've known sports teams in history that were chock full of superstar talent, couldn't win no championship. You got to have chemistry, you got to have teamwork. When I got my go-to mortgage professional, I know they, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, they quit work at 3:00 every day. They go pick up their kids at school. And I know their history. I get the chemistry. I know where they are, when they're there. I drink beer with them after work once or twice a week, Middle of the page. IRS. Guess what, y'all? There's tax consequences more often than not in real estate transfers. I say transfer because it could be a gift, could be a sale, could be somebody dying from you inheriting property from a will. So yeah, there's tax consequences. So there will be some reporting requirements, 1099. But based on a nugget, let's talk about another IRS form. Write this in the margin. It's not in the book. IRS form 8300. This is based on a nugget from students. IRS form 8300. And then below that, write $10,000. The number, not the word. Guys, I don't know what y'all know about the 70s and 80s, but there was a lot of cocaine being done in the 70s and 80s. Did y'all see the movie Scarface? Yeah, that was the 70s and 80s. And the big drug kingpins were living large, off the grid. Why? Because they're spending cash. So the IRS, they said one out of four $5 bill, no, one out of four $1 bills had traces of cocaine back in the 70s and 80s. So now, but based on the IRS form 8300, if there's ever a business transaction from you where $10,000 is involved, you receive it, you pay it, you win it at a casino. That's how my family says it. Or Messina. Did I tell you the Messina story? Yeah. $10,000. Anybody ever been involved with one? You walk into a car lot, you're going to pay cash for a car, they're going to be in IRS form 8300. Okay. That's so that they can be, the government can be aware of some stuff you might be doing. I kind of disagree with it. It kind of seems anti-American to me, but I get the spirit of it. But you know what they say the road to hell was paved with? Maybe y'all don't. Good intentions. Do you think there's a lot of $9,999 deals as a result of this law? Yeah, it's so stupid. There's no way. The crooks were instantly, oh, there's no way around this. Somebody went, yeah, there is. 9,999. Easiest damn thing to get around. Conducting the closing is very regional. Again, like soda pop, like grits cream of wheat. This is really a grits cream of wheat. You know, grits cream of wheat, same thing, same color, but variations of each other. So at the top of page 265, face-to-face closing, coincidentally, this is what we do in Alabama. In Alabama, the custom is for the buyer and seller to meet each other, to sit across the table from each other at the closing. It typically takes place at an attorney's office, and the attorney represents the lender. Y'all, I've been doing this for a minute. I had one time in my illustrious career, I had a buyer bring up an attorney to the table. One time. So yeah, the buyer and seller can bring their attorney if they want to, but why spend the money? Because the lender's very paranoid. Lenders are so paranoid, by God. Every I got to be dotted, every T, everything documented, everything claimed. The lenders are so paranoid. You can feel good about things as a buyer. You really can. So face to face, coincidentally, what we do in Alabama, the closing agent would be the attorney. And they are representing the lender, not the buyer or the seller. And the exchange takes place, deed for money, right across the table from each other. Guys, let me tell you something. Real estate, the successful people in real estate are referred to in life as self-starters. You ever heard that term? I don't know another term. I'm sure there are other terms, but they're people who don't need their hand held. Some people do, and this ain't a right or wrong conversation. We all are how we are because of how we're hardwired. Some of that's DNA. Some of it's our experiences through our youth that imprinted. But some people need their hand held. Nothing the matter with that. There are people who are dynamic at what they do, but by God, in the beginning, they needed their hand held, you know, but they're dynamic now. Some people don't need their hand held. They'll figure it out on their own, you know. And those are the kind of people that tend to make it in real estate. I'll figure it out on my own. If I make a mistake, I'm not going to dig a hole and crawl in it. I don't care. You know, some people, they just ain't scared of nothing. You know, especially about being embarrassed. And that's one thing you got to get over. That's what that 82-year-old mentor of mine told me. Mark, you got to get over being embarrassed. And that's why y'all see me. I'm just a damn fool. I don't care if I'm a damn fool. I don't care if you know how stupid I am in some areas. I could care less. And when you go to work at a real estate company, do not expect your hand to get held. Now, there's an old saying, you know, in sales, some people overpromise and underdeliver. Brokers are notorious for overpromising and underdelivering. When you go interview with a broker, oh my God, they'll promise you the moon and the stars. But then once you get in, you'll discover no one is sitting down beside you to help you. No one. You're sitting there twiddling your thumbs. You got ambitions big as an elephant. You got a direction you see in your mind. But where do I start? And how do I get the ball rolling? Nobody is going to come sit down beside you and hold your hand and say, I care about you. They will if you ask. If you're not an assertive person, I'm going to recommend once you get in, find a pre-read book on Amazon for $3 on how to become assertive, because that's what you've got to be in the real estate business. When you get in the business, just start looking around. After you introduce yourself to everybody, you know what? Endear people to you. Start bringing cupcakes, you know, start bringing something nice, you know. Oh, this Mark guy, he all right. You know, he's bringing some food. He's good. I may do him a favor. endear people to you, but then start imposing your will on others. After a couple of weeks in the business, who in here's got a closing this week? You do? I'm going with you. Notice I didn't ask. I'm going with you. You can introduce me as your assistant. It'll make you look big. And I won't say a damn word. I'll just hold your stuff. I want to be a fly on the wall. I want to go to the closing. I want to observe. I want to hear. I want to see how people's acting. You know, I want to see the questions being asked. Because you've been to a closing 2 or 3 times. When you go for your closing, it won't be that big of a deal. You've been there, done that. And then ask around, who in here got a showing this week? Oh, you do? I'm going with you. You can introduce me as your assistant. I'll tote your stuff. I won't say a word. I just want to watch you in action. Watch the questions that the buyer asks. You know, how do they answer them? And don't just do it to one agent. There's different ways to skin a cat. You know, purposely pick the nerd out in the office. Try to go on a showing with him, a listing presentation. Then try to go with the crazy one, you know. Oh, he's crazy as hell. You know that one you say about? Try to pick that one, go and get the different styles. Yours could be somewhere in the middle. Doesn't have to be his or hers, but just watch how it's done and you'll figure out it ain't trigonometry, damn it. Showing houses is not calculus. Getting people to trust you, the psychology, that's calculus, but it's easy to learn. And then just going to work every day. That's all you got to do. You just got to go to work every day because nobody's requiring you to go to work. That's one of the hardest things to do is make yourself go to work. So yeah, I said all of that because of this. Go to a few closings as a rookie, right? Your first week or two in there, just ask around, who's got a closing? I'm going with you. Just be with them. Who's got a listing presentation? You do. I'm going with you. Don't wait on someone to offer anything to you. Impose your will. Turn the page 266. This is the cream of wheat. Closing and escrow. Face-to-face was grits. Closing and escrow is the cream of wheat. And if that helped you understand, then write grits and cream of wheat. I'm just saying, if I ever give you an analogy or an example, and it can help you remember. But knowing there's 2 ways of closing, you're going to forget in 2 weeks when you open the book. But when you see the grits and the cream of wheat written, oh, I remember Mark saying you can do it 1 or 2 different ways. This is typically the way everybody else does it. I watch TV and movies just like y'all do. And you'll watch television, you'll watch a movie, and the characters will be like, Stan, don't forget, we've got escrow on Thursday. They're talking about a closing, you know? That's what they call closings. We know what an escrow account is. And in case you don't, I'll remind you, it's an account meant to hold money for a temporary period of time. And why do we call it escrow? Because first of all, let's agree this. It's not a face-to-face closing. If it was, it'd be called face-to-face. It's not. Sometimes the seller will do what they got to do on a Tuesday, and then the buyer will do what they got to do on a Thursday. Since the buyer will do what they got to do on a Monday, the seller will come in on Friday. So, but whatever, when the buyer comes in and brings the purchase price, it's going to be placed in escrow. And then when the seller comes in to do their end, they get the check out of escrow, right? But it's an account holding money for a temporary period of time. But the point is to close the deal, to settle up, to exchange deed for money and get all the necessary paperwork signed and initialed. Whether you do it grits or cream of wheat, that's the purpose. We're settling up, exchanging money, and signing a bunch of paperwork. I really do wish that there were some business matters that would be standardized nationally. You know, like Georgia, every real estate company is required to use the same real estate contract, purchase agreement. In Alabama, there's a 50,000 different purchase agreements. Every company has their own purchase agreement. Don't get me wrong, they all look the same, but you can just slip a clause in and change one purchase agreement from another one quickly. So I'm just thinking out loud. I wish we would standardize some things, but we don't. There's just variations on doing the same thing. And depending on where you're at, you got to learn how they do it and why they do it. And sometimes nobody knows why they do things in a certain way. You know, I heard an old story one time. Man and a woman been married 10 years, 20 years. And wife calls husband and says, will you bring a pan home for the ham? No, I'm screwing it up. I ain't heard this story in so long. No, she calls husband at work. Will you stop by the store and bring a ham home for Thanksgiving? That was the story. Well, he gets home 7:30 because 2.5 hours of traffic and line at the ham store. So he's miserable when he gets in. It's cold outside. He slams the ham on the counter. There's your damn ham. She says, you big dummy. You didn't get the butt ends of the ham cut off. What are you, stupid? You're supposed to get the butt ends of the ham cut. He said, who made that rule up? Who told you you got to get the butt ends of the ham? She says, everybody knows you get the butt ends of the ham cut off. My mama always got the butt ends of the ham cut off. He said, get your mama on the phone. They called mama. Mama, why you get the butt ends of the ham cut off? She said, I told my daughter not to marry your dumb ass. Everybody knows you get the butt ends of the ham cut off. My mama always cut in the butt ends of. He got out the phone with mama. He said, get your damn grandmama on the phone. He got grandmama on the phone. Grandma, why do you get the butt ends of the ham cut off? Because when we got married, one of our gifts was a pan and it was only this wide. So yeah, often there's people doing things for years. I have no idea why they're doing them, but it's usually for some stupid reason. So over here on page 267, legislation related to closing. The first thing we're going to do is remind ourselves about the RESPA conversation we've already had. The one thing I want you to remember about real estate settlement procedures, we call it a settlement. I've noticed I've started doing this a lot. I've never done this, but I've been picking up on myself. I've been doing this when I'm teaching. Have y'all noticed that? It's weird. That's in the life. I'm going to start doing the accordion like Trump. I don't. Think residential. When you hear RESPA, I know the R stands for real estate, but I want you to think residential. Because RESPA is a set of regulations on real estate financing. And if you can recall our conversation about it, I said not all real estate financing, just 1 through 4 residential, federally related loans, and meaning not owner financing, etc. So what I want you to do is if I'm thinking residential, here, look at the bottom list of page 267, you see the bulletin list. RESPA does not apply to the following. One, loans on large properties. Why would you think that first bullet? Because typically homes are not on large properties. Are there exceptions to the rule? Yeah, homes out in the country. Yeah, home with 28 acres. But do y'all know this? If I'm going to try to buy a home with 20 acres out in the country, and I'm going to try to get a VA or an FHA or a conventional loan, I'm not going to be able to get a 30-year mortgage on the home at 20 acres. They're going to cut the home off with a half acre and then have 19.5 acre parcel. They will make it 2 parcels. They will do a 30-year mortgage on a home and a half acre, and then you'll have to get a bank loan on the 19.5 acres. Y'all follow me? You don't get mortgages on property. You get mortgages on structures. You don't get mortgages on property. You get mortgages on structures. So a loan on a large property We just had that story. Loans for business or agriculture purposes. Well, hell, that's not a residential loan. Construction loans or other temporary financing. That's a bank loan. Y'all remember me telling you that. It's a short-term loan or a temporary loan, but it's a bank loan. Developers and builders get money from banks. They don't get mortgage money because there ain't no structure when they get the money. Vacant land, I think you see where we're going, okay? Think residential, because we're learning about so many daggum regulations, y'all. I want you to get to the closing and just have the ability to get back to where residential, okay. And now you can remember. Turning the page. On page 268, affiliated business arrangement, write one-stop shopping in the left margin. One-stop shopping. I literally remember the day. I remember where I was. I was at home in the front yard. It was probably April, like it is now, and I'm probably doing some gardening, when you get in your property ready for the summer. And I remember my friend coming on, we're talking in the front yard, and she said, "Did you hear Walmart's fixing to start selling groceries?" I said, "And who in the hell would buy groceries at Walmart?" Me. That's where I get my groceries. Walmart saw the writing on the wall. Because like I told y'all at another block, not that y'all have to hear me tell you crap, but the women working wasn't really normal until the 80s. I mean, there were women working in the 70s, 60s, 50s, but they were an exception to the rule. So, 80s and 90s, 20 years of both husband and wife working, time became very valuable. So Walmart saw the writing on the wall. Have y'all ever noticed? I've got friends and family that hate Walmart more than they hate anything in the world. You ever notice somebody, anytime they say Walmart, they're gritting their teeth? But I run into them once a damn month. I've never seen people hate something so viciously, but I run into them once a month in Walmart. I don't know why people hate Walmart so bad. Anybody in here hate Walmart? Why could you hate someone who just tries to sell you something cheap as dirt? I got no problem with Walmart. But let's talk about the one-stop shopping. They got their old department store, then they added the grocery store. They always had the ability to fix the car on the back, new tires, brakes, checkup. Now they got a little Subway or a Mickey D's or a Taco Bell in there. Got a place for you to get some photography done. Usually got a bank where you get some banking done. An eyeglass joint where you can take care of your optima stuff. A place for you to get your hair done, your nails done. Some of them got dry cleaners I've been seeing. They got the FedEx and they got the drop-offs for the FedEx now. You can get in there and get your taxes done in tax season. I think some of them got the things remembered now. I think I've seen a Claire's in one. In that. I've never had that sound effect on my phone ever. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Realty South in 1995. Realty South in 1995, they were ahead of Walmart, honestly. Realty South, I don't know if y'all know this. Realty South was 5 companies in Birmingham merged and formed Realty South. 4 of them were the largest in Birmingham. You had Brigham Williams. I don't know if any of y'all old enough. First Real Estate, Johnson, Rice and Hayes, and Ray and Company, and Pointer Properties. Yeah. And they wanted to take advantage of this new concept called one-stop shop. And I tried to get in on it. I was a 30-year-old cat, and I met with all of them, the CEOs, and I tried to get a niche in their company, but it didn't work. They started Mortgage South. You can see you got Realty South. They started Mortgage South. They started a company called Title South because they figure if I've got you in here for the oil change, we might as well do your car wash. You know, I mean, you might as well kill two birds with one stone. That's the thinking. I done got you and I got all your information, your phone number, your email, all your, why would you have to spend another day with somebody else and give them the same, fill out the same forms? So we're trying to save people time and money. There's nothing the matter with one-stop shopping, but it is the potential for fraud is there. Like if a home inspector is highly recommending repairman, and then they recommend a repairman, you find out the repairman's his brother, and that they work a scam. He notes repairs, and then he sends the business to his brother-in-law. You see how that referral, that one-stop shopping could be fraud a lot often. So the two things I want you to know about ABA, affiliated business arrangement or one-stop shopping, is the first bullet. If I own 1% or more of the company that I'm referring you to, I must disclose that fact. So if I say, I highly recommend that you use Blue and Gold Mortgage, but I must disclose to you that I have an ownership position in that company. So that makes sense. If I own 1% or more, I must disclose that fact. And then the second bullet, that you don't have to use these people just because I'm recommending them. There's other people that do the same thing. So 2 bullets. You don't have to use who I'm recommending because there are others that do the same thing. In other words, the second and third bullet are the same bullet to me. So we're still on the subject of things that RESPA requires. And you see at the bottom of the page, a mortgage servicing transfer statement. Y'all, I've never really understood the point of this, but have I not told you that mortgage lenders really don't make the interest? They sell the loans. Not all do. There's a few mortgage lenders who don't sell. They'll keep a few. They sell the majority, but they keep a few. Kind of like you and your personal investments. You've got some long-term investments, your 401k, but then you may do some day trading. You know, you'll buy a stock and sell it a week later. You know, so you got some long-term in your life. You got some short-term in your life. Same way with mortgage lenders. So if there's a likelihood that they're going to sell the loan, they got to tell you at closing, and it's called a servicing transfer statement. It just says it just says to the buyer, there's a strong likelihood that we may sell the right to service this monthly payment to somebody else soon after the closing. Again, I told you I don't understand the need for the disclosure, but I'm just a knucklehead that likes to gripe and complain. Top of page 269. TILA RESPA integrated disclosure rule. The one thing I hate about this block of information in the book is they refer to the past in a way that's confusing. Let's just talk about it like this. I told y'all last week that if you work for a mortgage company, your job is a pain in the neck. You have to make sure every loan coming down the assembly line is complying with 2 elephant-sized pieces of legislation, RESPA and Truth in Lending. It's a pain in the neck. A lot of duplicity, meaning they both require a lot of the same things, but they're different. So you used to have Truth in Lending required a form from the mortgage lender, and then RESPA required the realtor to provide a form up front after the mortgage loan application was made. And then at the end of the loan, RESPA required the real estate company to do this and the mortgage company to do this. 4 forms. So the government said 4 forms is ridiculous. Let's just make it 2 forms. So to integrate is to combine, if you will, weave together. So they weave together the four forms, thus creating just two forms. So the two forms that are now required, the first one, and put out in the left-hand margin, the first form is the loan now put up front, yeah. The first up front form, up front's the main word I want you to know, is the loan estimate form. 1, 2, 3, 4. Go to the fourth line in that page and highlight the sentence that reads, the loan estimate form must be provided to the consumer 3 business days. Now, guys, here we're getting into, first of all, understand all rules, loans, and all rules and regulations and laws are meant to protect consumers from other consumers and other business people, crooked people. And y'all, I've told you, that we are all red, white, and blue, normal people. We have bubblegum psychology, and we don't want to look stupid. That is a trend across the board with people. We don't want to look stupid. We don't want to be embarrassed. And when we're adults, we don't want to be at a real estate closing and go, what's this mean? What's that big old word? What am I paying for? We just shut up and pay whatever the hell they say pay because we don't want to look stupid. And businesses take advantage of that, y'all. They know we don't want to look stupid. They know that dynamic exists in our brain. That's why that 82-year-old man told me, he said, Mark, don't you hesitate to tell somebody you stupid. If you need to know something in order to move forward, then by God, you acquire that knowledge. All of what we're about to talk about over the next 30 minutes is to prevent the person who ain't saying stuff, who ain't asking questions, from getting ripped off, okay? So the loan estimate form, what you just highlighted, must be provided to the consumer within 3 days after the app is submitted. Why? To give me time to show it to some people that are smarter than me in my life, like my daddy, if I'm a young man. Daddy, does this look above board? Am I getting tooken? Are these people legit? Does this gives you time? I got my form. I got the numbers. I can, show it to people I trust. Now, at the bottom of the page, you see closing costs are divvied up into 3 categories. Now, me and you know them as closing costs. But guys, here's where the corruption tends to take place from mortgage people. Right before the closing. I would imagine there's somebody in here that has bought real estate or sold real estate before. I know people who've sold real estate who've never bought real estate. They inherited it and then had to sell it down the road. So I know some of you in here may have sold real estate before or bought or both. And if you have done one or either, you know it's mentally taxing. Just filling out the paperwork, initial, and then them calling you, Mr. Yob, we forgot to get this. Can you get this? Can you get the last 3 years of your credit card statements? Can you call the power company and get your last 2 years of your account history? Mr. Yob, can you get your from the termite? We need to get this. It's a pain in the ass. I mean, you get to the point you just want to scream at people. Cuss and drink vodka. That's what my mother used to say. Did y'all's mom ever tell you, boy, you about to make me start cussing and drink vodka? Early in the morning is when my mama would say that. I didn't know what vodka was, but it is so mentally taxing that the corruption tends to take place in the last 2, 3, 4 days. See, they'll call you right at the end because you know you're about to close. Kind of like my daughter. My daughter's about to have a baby in 1 week. So they're going to call you 3 days before the unscrupulous ones would. They'll call you the day before closing. Mr. Yarb, I know we told you your payment was going to be $1,436.19, but we didn't know that this was going to happen, and we didn't know that that was going to be true. So your payment's actually not going to be 1436. It's going to be 1472. That's $36 more. You want to just scrap this whole deal? What do you likely to say? Oh, to hell with it. Because you've gone through a month of being pushed and pulled and having to produce. You'll see where I'm coming from. Oh, they'll call you up, Mr. Yarber, when we gave you the loan estimate form up front. I know we told you this was only going to be $436, this fee for this provider of this survey, whatever, but it's actually going to be $550. That's $100 more. Do you just want to scrap this whole damn deal because of that? Hell no. I'll pay it. You know, they know. That's why in the last week, that's when the unscrupulous start dumping stuff on you because they know they can get away with it. And that's why a lot of these rules came about to address that strategy of waiting to the last minute. So before we move on to the next page, at the time these rule changes took place, the law decided to divvy up closing costs into 3 categories. You see them? You got your no tolerance category. You got your 10% tolerance category. You got your unlimited. What does this mean, Mr. Yarber? Well, your first one, no tolerance. By God, if they quoted it to you and it's on the loan estimate form, that better be what's on the final form. No tolerance. You charge me what you, don't be telling me at the end, this ain't what you thought it was going to be. It's actually going to be a little, no, there's no tolerance for a group. And then the second group is a group that the courts admit that there is some legitimate reasons why it may be more at the end than it was up front. So there's a 10% tolerance. So what's 10% of 300? 30. So if you quoted me something 300 up front, the most you could change it to would be 330. Do you see that? The most is a 10% tolerance. And then an unlimited tolerance, this is a group of closing costs that the mortgage lender cannot manipulate. Like your taxes, that's between you and the government, right? You can't, the mortgage company can't manipulate your taxes. They can't manipulate some. So there is some closing costs that the government says can double, change, triple, whatever, because it's not somebody manipulating you. It's a legit reason. So the unlimited tolerance are legit costs that could go up whatever amount. But the reason they did this was to address the strategy of coming at you at the end with some BS. Turn the page. If you'll look over the next few pages, this is an example of the loan estimate form. Now, does it have to be accurate? No, there's a reason they call it an estimate. And we just discussed the fact that there's a 10% tolerance category of closing costs. So no, it does not have to be accurate. There is a reason we use the word estimate. Things can change for legitimate reasons. Now, on here, page 273, here's at the end form. Okay, we wrote upfront form on the loan estimate, right at the end form. This is required at the end because now we've got to have accurate, not estimates. I want documentation of the actual numbers. That's what this closing disclosure form is. Y'all, I have not been in the business and done any of these. I've been off the streets, so to speak, since these requirements came about. We used to have to do a good faith estimate and at the end have a HUD-1, and all those are old forms. They don't exist anymore. You just got the loan estimate form and the closing disclosure. The closing disclosure took the place of the HUD-1. Seventh line, highlight the rest of the paragraph. 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th lines of the paragraph. The borrower must receive a completed closing disclosure. That line and down to the bottom of the paragraph. So the borrower must receive a closing disclosure. You got to know the why. At least 3 business days before the closing. Let's think about this. Think about it from a layperson standpoint. You ain't going to be nerdish. Why do you think the law is requiring that I receive the CD? And that's what they call it. Again, when they first started calling it, I thought of a disc, CD. Why would the law think to require that we receive it 3 days before the closing? So I can show it to somebody in my life that's smarter than me, like my daddy. Daddy, would you look at this? Or my attorney, because I feel like something don't feel, something don't feel right in my belly. And they say your gut's usually correct, gives me a chance to see if everything is on the up and up. Maybe I could compare it to another mortgage company. Who knows? And then if for whatever reason, between loan application and closing, if anything needs to change, the interest rate, if the interest rate has to go higher than an 8, for instance, let me pull up the whiteboard. I don't expect y'all to know what an 1/8 is, but if you've been in the mortgage business, an 1/8 is just natural to you. If you don't do math a lot, then an 1/8 is not, but an 1/8 is 0.125. So you might have quoted me 7% up front. And then the lender tells me 3 days before closing, Mr. Yarborough, we can't give you 7%. We only gave you a 30-day lock on 7%. And that 30 days expired because the closing had to be postponed. And the rates have worsened. Luckily for you, they have not worsened terribly. We can only give you 7 and an 1/8. Well, that's 0.125 if you write it decimally. Well, look at here. They do not have to give me a new CD and push the closing out 3 days. But had they say, Mr. Yarborough, I know we quoted you 7% up front, but the rate expired, and now the new rate is 7.25. Well, you've got to print a new closing disclosure and push the closing out 3 days from when that closing did. The closing can never take place shorter than 3 days after the most recent closing disclosure. And every time the rate changes more than an 1/8 of a point, they have to print a new CD, which means the closing is going to have to get pushed out again, because the closing has always got to be 3 days after the most recent CD. So every time they have to print a new CD, the closing gets pushed out 3 days. Why? Again, you know why. To give me a chance to talk to people smarter than me and make sure everything seems above board. So again, the interest rate goes higher than an 1/8 of a point. It can raise an 8 and no new CD required. But higher than an 1/8, new CD required, thus a new 3-day waiting period. Now, I don't know if you would need to know this, but what if I got a vacation scheduled on the second day after the new CD and I'm the buyer? I could waive my 3 days. Okay. I don't know if you need to know that, but I told you the 3 days, the closing's always got to take place 3 days after the most recent CD. But if I, the buyer, am willing to waive that BS 3D, I can. Because again, like I said, maybe I got a vacation scheduled or something,
Seller.
Yeah, correct. The seller can't because it ain't his loan. Yeah, good question. So over the next page, 274, 275, you see 276, 278, 279, an example of the CD. And you know what? It looks a lot like the loan estimate form. But instead of estimates, they are the actual numbers. We're going to end up on page 279 when we come back from break. See y'all back here at 11:19. Why am I doing this? I've got a fancy app. Oh my gosh. And if I'm not mistaken, y'all All right, gang, hopefully you're back. If you can hear my voice, virtual students, please make your way in this direction. We are on page 279. So at the top of page 279, and again, I know I keep saying it, but some of y'all are a couple inches behind me. But where I'm at is right after the form. Kickbacks and referral fees, we know they are illegal. We've already had that conversation. Y'all, back in the day, kickbacks were legit. You know, my father owned a large real estate company in the 60s and 70s and into the mid 80s. It's a coincidence that I'm in the real estate business. I did not follow in his footsteps. We were adversaries, honestly. But him and my mama went on cruises paid for in full by mortgage companies. And this was back in the day when regular people didn't go on cruises. I'll never go on a cruise again. I've only gone on Carnival cruises because I'm just a regular dude. But I ain't going. The last Carnival cruise I was on, I might as well have been in Walmart. Y'all know what I'm talking about? There's a lot of people beneath me in this world that I refuse to vacation with. Now, I'm just kind of kidding right now, but y'all know what I'm saying. When it was, you know, you do this in Walmart and open up your eyes and look around. Those are the people I saw on the boat. But back in that day, my parents' day, only the to-do went on the cruise. It was a nice vacation. And it was above board, legit. Man, they went to Bermuda. This is my dad talking. Acapulco, Hawaii, Cuba, and often flew out of Chicago. Y'all got relatives that talk like that? I heard my dad say Chicago. I said, don't you ever say that in public again. Chicago, for crying out loud. The Mortgage Disclosure Improvement Act is what we have been referencing for a minute. You didn't even know it. The 3 categories of closing costs that came as a part of the Mortgage Disclosure Improvement Act. The 3 days for the loan estimate form, and the 3 days closing after the final, and you know, blah blah. The Mortgage Disclosure Improvement Act. So now we're here on page 280, y'all. In the name of humility, I told y'all that's my theme, has been since I was 25. I've told y'all I failed 3 classes in college. That was back when college used to actually grade exams, and accounting 3 was one of the 3 classes I failed. You either got to like numbers or hate numbers. I don't think there's any in between. You know, I really don't. You ever notice that? People with accounting love numbers. It makes them feel warm. That's just weird to me. I'm not comfortable with them. So debits and credits, confusing. So y'all, again, there's some people who sit in my classes and their intelligence is insulted. I get it. Because y'all are talking, I'm a pile of compost. You know, and I learn in a certain way and I pass that on to students, and hopefully a lot of y'all are the same. So I try to country stuff up, dumb it down, make it seem more understandable. So a lot of y'all right now, you're like, Mark, I got no problem with credits and debits. A lot of y'all are like me. So let's start out real simple and let's do this. A debit is bad and a credit is good. Can we do that? Let's just start there. I don't think anybody got a problem knowing what's bad and good. A debit is an expense. That's why I say it's bad. Anytime I got to reach and pull my billfold out, I ain't happy. A credit is good. You know, maybe I paid for a year worth of something and now I'm moving halfway into the year. I want the balance back in the form of a refund. Y'all know where I'm coming from on that? They don't call it a refund. Accountants call it a credit. So a credit is good. You ever pay the wrong credit card and you got a credit balance on one now and you're like, hell yeah. It's like free money, but it ain't. You know what I mean? Got an $800 credit on this credit card. Feel like it's free. I'm just telling you my personal experience. So debit's bad, credit's good. That's a great place to start. I'll give you an example of a credit, y'all. There's two kinds of states as far as property taxes. We've agreed with that's common in everything else, grits, cream of wheat, right? Some states pay taxes in advance, property taxes. Some states pay property taxes in arrears. We should all pay them in advance. Ain't that the way rent's paid? Yeah, you pay June's rent on June 1. In Alabama, you pay June's rent on June 30, effectively, as far as property taxes. We don't pay taxes till the end of the year. Most states, you pay taxes at the beginning of the year like you pay rent. So in Alabama, when I close, I'm going to owe taxes. In every other state, most states pay taxes in advance. And most states' fiscal year is the calendar year, which makes the math easy. So if I'm in a state that pays taxes in advance, which is the majority of states, if I pay for a full year of taxes on January 1, if I'm selling my house and moving out and selling to you on July 1, I'm entitled to the second half of the year in the form of a refund or credit. What if I'm a restaurant and I pay for 2,000 gallons of natural gas. I got a big old tank out in the back of my restaurant, or it's underground more than likely. But I'm selling my restaurant to you, and there's 1,000 gallons of natural gas in that tank. I'm going to want you to give me a check at closing. And that check's going to show up as a credit on the seller side. I think you understand the concept of a credit. If there's something owed to me, it's going to come back in the form of a credit, like I'm saying. What if I am a buyer, okay, and I make an offer on a property and I put $3,000 earnest money check up? The offer is accepted. I go make application for mortgage, and the mortgage person tells me, Mr. Yarber, based on your numbers right here, you're going to have to pay $10,000 down payment and $5,000 closing costs. I'm going to need for you to show up with $15,000 in the form of a cashier's check. Now, I could show up on closing with $15,000, me the buyer, that's my down payment closing cost, and then you give me my $3,000 earnest money back, right? That's stupid. Just give me credit for the earnest money against these monies that I owe. So 10 and 5 is 15. Subtract the 3 from that. I'll just bring 12. You give me credit for the earnest money. You see where I'm coming with that? So just based on this little 3 to 5 minute conversation we've already had, I don't know where you've stood on your knowledge about debits and credits, but I already think we're in a good place because this ain't calculus. You know, if there weren't such fancy forms and fancy programs and we just did things practically, and I was the listing agent on a $200,000 house, and we get a full price offer, and the seller says, hey, Mark, will you sit down at the kitchen table and show me how this is going to work itself out at closing? Say, all right. Well, you're going to pay me, you promised to pay me a 6% commission in the listing agreement. That's $12,000. So we're going to subtract 12. And I believe you've got a mortgage balance of $58,000, don't you? Yeah. Okay. You got to pay that off at the closing, got to pay your mortgage off. And I believe the buyer asked us to pay $2,000 of his closing costs, didn't he? You agreed to that too, didn't you? Yeah. So we're going to subtract the $2,000. And I did the math, and you're going to get $1,200 refund or credit on your taxes, on your property taxes. And then we do the math. And I can do this in my head, 70, 72, actually 71. So that's 129, 128.8. So this is what you're going to net at the closing, Mr. Seller. You're going to net $128,000. When the dust settles, this is what you can put in your pocket and walk away. This was a debit. This was a debit. This was a debit. And this was a credit. Y'all see how that worked? Now, let me show you an example of an item that could be a debit and a credit for both parties at the closing. And here's how this is going to work out. So let's say I'm selling a rental property, got a tenant in it, and you're going to inherit my tenant. We said that that's a good thing. So in this little scenario, y'all, well, son of a gun, I'm going to need my little calculator. Oh, here it is. I receive $1,200 rent on May 1. I'm the current owner. But I'm selling to you on May 11. Now, listen to me, y'all. Would y'all agree that even though I collected $1,200 on May 1st, if I'm transferring title to you on May 11, I only earned 11 days of that 1,200. You're entitled to 19 days of that 1,200. So what we're going to do is what they call prorate. And again, I'm not trying to say that insultingly. So we're going to divide 1,200 by 30. Gosh, I can do that math in my head. That's $4 a day of rent. So if I owe you 19 days at closing, I'm just gonna, that's $76, 760. That's $40 a day. Damn. I got it right. Yeah, I did the math wrong. Y'all see where I'm at? $1,200 a month of rent divided by 30 days in a month is $40 a day. That's how much your rent is. And if I owe you 19 days at the closing, there will be a credit on the buyer's CD for 760, and there will be a debit on the seller's side for $760. If you get that and you're going to get a question right, God bless you. If that's beyond the math in your head, whether you pass or fail the exam ain't going to be based on this question. Just go, I'll be damned. That's one I'm going to miss. You know, I know men that are great with cars, but they're lost with transmissions. Should he think less of himself? No, I'm good with everything else on a car. I got to ask questions when it comes to the transmission. So you ain't gonna be able to master all these concepts in your mind. If one is not comfortable to you, big damn deal. Over here on page 283. Look at the second bullet on general rules for prorating. Just highlight 360 days on the second line. Don't highlight the whole thing, just 360 days. Guys, y'all know some months have 31 days, some months have 30 days. Hell, February has 28 days. And if you're going to there'll be a property tax proration question, I have a feeling. So just like I did rent, what you would do is if the taxes are $1,436 a year, Let me just pull up the damn whiteboard. Question may say, Mark paid for the 4 years of taxes, paid $1,736 on January 1. Here he is selling it to you on July 23rd. So the buyer will owe from July 23rd through the end of the year at closing. The seller gets a credit for July 24th through the end of the year. See where I'm at? So how do I figure it up? You're not going to divide 1736 by 365 days, which is the number of days in a year. You're going to divide it by 360. Guys, on a standardized exam, they don't want you at the exam site having to go, does June have 30 days or does June have 31 when you're trying to determine the number of days? So for exam purposes only, every month has 30 days. There's 12 months in a year. So the month for testing purposes, the year has 360 days. So I divide 1736 by 360, and I get $4.82 per day. That's what my taxes are. So let's figure it out, y'all. Look at me. As a seller, I'm gonna get a refund for December, November, October, September, August. That's 5 months times 30 days. And then 7 days, that's 150. And then the 7 days from July 30 to July 23. So that's 7 days. So 157 total. So 157 times 482 would be the credit for the seller and the debit for the buyer. I can do it right here since I'm doing some math. $757.09. So there would be a credit to the seller and a debit to the buyer. That's how they mention it. Either CB or DB or CS or CB. Again, guys, I'm not good at math, but in my mind, that's easy math. But my mind's different than yours. So if that's not easy math in your mind, we just had the conversation. Big deal. Highlight the third bullet, the first sentence. On almost every mortgage, the interest is paid in arrears. Here's what that means. And I put a star. Every loan, there's a question. Every exam, there's a question. They want you to know interest is paid in arrears. Here's how that works. Guys, we have already agreed upon the fact that our mortgage payment is PITI. This is the interest portion. So every month I make my monthly payment. The interest is for the previous month. So when I make my June 1 mortgage payment, the interest portion, the PITI, the interest portion of my monthly payment is covering the previous 30 days, May. So I make my July payment, the interest portion of my July payment is covering the month of June. All right, so conceptually, interest is paid in arrears. Whenever you're paying interest, you're paying for a previous period of time, not for a future period of time. And guys, the seller owns the day of closing. there'll be a proration question similar to what I just did on the property taxes. And there'll be answer choice A and B will be $4.62 away from each other. Didn't you see that's what it was per day? Or something like that. And why? Because are you charging the buyer for the day of closing or are you charging the seller for the day of closing? Seller owns the day of closing. So if it's income, rental income, the seller owns the day of closing. That's his rental income. If it's an expense, the seller owns the day of closing. Expense and income. The seller owns the day of closing. So there could be one pro rata day separating two answer choices. Pull your antennas up, look closely at the question, and see who owns the day of closing. The seller does. They give you some tax over the next couple of pages, like right here on page 284. Actually, 285. Give you a couple of tax pro. Guys, YouTube has 1,000 real estate exam math instructors. Okay. Go on the YouTube, real estate exam math. You'll find instructors doing an hour, 2 hours, 15 minutes, PowerPoint, dude on a chalkboard, all kinds of variety of videos. If you feel like you need a little brush up, guys, I'm going to tell you right now, if you're 35 and bad at math, you're going to die bad at math. All right. There ain't a damn thing you can do in this stage of your life. But what I'm saying is sometimes we are decent at math. We just need a little brush up. Get you a little brush up on the YouTube. But if you're bad at math now, don't even think you can get good at it in the next damn 5 days or 3 weeks, because you ain't. And I'm telling you right now, it's counterproductive to try to learn math right now. You need to concede those questions. I'm being straight up with you. So now we are at our key point review, and perfect timing for us. We're going to do our 20-question quiz that precedes it. So let's turn to the key point review. Guys, do not skip this very important step. Spend 2 or 3 minutes rifling through the key point review to cement for retention purposes what we just learned before you ease into the 20-question quiz. Do the flip back on the quiz. All right, I got break time. So right after that 15 minutes, we got another 15-minute break. I'm gonna shorten it to 13. Had some people telling me they think our breaks are too long. I like it. All right. Let's tell me the number of days first. Let me see if I'm right. Pay taxes in advance. Yeah. Pay 2,000. And then. How much? First of all, did you figure out what it is per day? Yeah. Okay. Well, we gotta figure out how much of the refund. So, so the seller's gonna get all of July, August, September, October, November, December, that's 6 months, that's 30 days, it's 180 days, 180 plus 5, 185 days. I did the number of months. Oh, no. Da-da-dee, da-da-dee, dee-dee-dee, 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 dee-dee-dee. You worked it Friday? Do y'all feel like coming to the Craig Course Friday Hill? You really do feel like a help?
Yeah.
Just hearing it all tied together.
And I understood everything,
Yeah,
even though it's going to not be your book.
right. But even the material that I was reviewing, well,
I
it
did
kind
have
of,
one question.
Yeah.
How do you remember all those stories? I mean, spot on word to word.
you tell, you sing the song. And I'm not a comedian. I've got about 30 or 40 stories or jokes, and I'll cycle them. I'll tell some for about 2 months, and I'll tell some others, but, you know, there's no way that I would ever forget what the song. They've been singing it for 50 years, you know.
Good, I'm sorry.
But, you know, you're just proving the point. None of it's calculus, so to speak.
Right.
Every bit of it's all understandable, why it's required, just a, and the
I
time
highly
required.
recommend it. I highly recommend it.
And that cup was just way too. So my girls were like,
I know, they're like, no, I.
try, yeah, they were all. Way too generous. Has your work experience always been working with the company, your family's company? I see. And y'all have done excavating since y'all were honeymooners?
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, that's right, because it's family.
It was game,
That's right.
like, two generations.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't have a choice in that regard.
Not really.
Do you get it in Austin?
No.
Oh, online?
and he probably
Yeah, we can try this.
tried for that.
We'll take this home.
Opportunity today to go to the 1031 exchange closing. I know, and I'm not going to mention that, but we actually started that back a couple of months ago. This is our actually second time to be doing the 1031. Keeps rolling and rolling.
You know, there used to be a couple of questions on the exam. There's a chance that one could be on there now.
Okay.
How are you gonna be going to the closing? Is your business involved in this? What a learning, are both y'all going?
Well, that's what they asked.
That's what we're thinking about.
Huge learning experience. Do you understand the concept of why a 1031 exchange exists?
Me and Haley, we've had to do all the paperwork, we've had to learn it, it's like, it was overwhelming at first,
Yeah,
but.
well, here's the concept. If I'm a restaurateur, right, I have the tools in my trade, refrigerator, range, right?
Right.
Those are all equipment and they have a lifespan, just like humans in America, I think our lifespan is 78 to 80, you know? Well, a commercial dishwasher has a lifespan. Let's say it's a 10-year lifespan. Let's say it costs $30,000. 30,000 divided by 10 is $3,000 a year. I get to deduct from my gross revenues $3,000 for all my equipment. Because it's depreciating, it's not worth as much. And the $3,000 discount is kind of the way of, kind of the IRS's way of saying, we want to give you the ability to set some reserves aside so you'll be able to afford a new one down the road. Because we want you to be a viable business. If viable businesses are good for their company.
Right.
Well, a home is a product that depreciates in value, just like a dishwasher is. And the economic life on a home is dependent upon the president. It used to be 27 under Bush, then it went to 29 under Obama. I don't know what it is now, but let's say 30, just to make the math easy. So I take my $100,000 property, I back out the land, let's say that's 20,000, so I got 80 left. 80 divided by 30, whatever, 80,000 divided by 30, whatever that is, I get to write that off my rental income. So if I get $1,000 a month rent from you, that's $12,000 a year of income. Well, I want to make that $12,000 smaller because it'll make my tax burden smaller. So like 80,000 divided by 30, that's 2666. That's almost $3,000 that I would get to deduct off the $12,000 of rental income. Well, you can't have your cake and eat it too. If I depreciate my property for 15 years and now I want to sell it, I don't get to, I have to take those tax advantages I've been getting for 15 years and subtract it from to determine my book value. Anyway,
Right.
I don't know why I'm sweating.
Yeah.
But
If there's a-
booch, listen for the word booch. And be prepared to ask somebody what the word boot means. That's a big deal in a 1031 tax deferred exchange. And it's a word we use every day, like if he's in Anniston and he's got a skating rink that he's trying to sell and his book value on the property is 200. And I got a warehouse, a distribution warehouse in Hansel. And our attorney puts us together, they're 1031 brokers. You know, they put us together and let's say the book value on my property is 250. Well, if I exchange my deed with his, that's an unfair trade because I've got more equity. So the difference between 50, cut it top is 25. So when we exchange deeds at the closing, he would give me a check for 25,000, make up the difference in our book value. And that's called boot. And we use that every day. Like I'll give you my boat and throw my sister into boot.
I've done it on dirt bikes.
Huh?
Yeah, I've done it on dirt bikes and stuff.
Yeah. I'll throw this in addition to, boot.
Right.
And in fact, the reason I use that is because that probably might be the question you have on your exam. What is boot? Yeah.
Well, it's a question.
You look so beautiful. Can we do a talk on your real estate?
Term of endearment.
Just love paying taxes.
Hey, that's a good question to ask somebody. Write this down. Ask the attorney there. What is the economic life resident? That's the problem. On a residential home, what is the economic life? It's gonna be somewhere between 27 and 30 years. Just curious.
You talking about how many years can you count your depreciation?
No, they are coincidentally going to a 1031 tax deferred exchange closing after class today. I think what a beautiful learning experience. You know? So I'm just telling him some things to listen for, you know, to ask.
Well, I
Do
think-
you happen to know?
Well, I do know on residential properties, you can only depreciate your home 7 years for tax purposes. Yes.
Oh, hold on. I didn't
We're talking
know.
about two
No,
different
whoa,
things.
whoa, whoa, I
Two
didn't know.
different-
You
We're talking
can't,
about two different things.
you can't depreciate your primary residence. I'm talking about a rental property.
Yes, rental.
Appreciate it for the whole economic life.
And this is another thing, I just did all my taxes through my CPA last week, I had to file an extension.
Yeah.
And this is another thing that I wasn't aware of, because I really didn't keep up with it. So if you have rental property, so if I have a triplex, and my mortgage on my triplex is $2,000 a month. And let's just say that my rental income is $2,000 a month, I'm just putting those two together. My mortgage and my rental income are exactly the same, but I still have to count $2,000 a month as income, and that mortgage does not.
It's not a wash.
That's right, it's
Yeah,
not a
you don't
wash.
cancel them out,
It doesn't cancel each other out. And a lot of people think that can
We used
be,
to do mortgage pre-qualification in my post license class. I would say, these don't cancel.
They don't.
This debt and income, even though they're the same, don't cancel each other out.
Yep.
I gotta have two columns. Yeah.
Yep.
Great one. But 7 years, I gotta learn up on
I'm
that.
pretty sure it's 7
Yeah,
years.
yeah.
I'm
Just do economic life, 2024, economic life, residential property.
See that?
I'm thinking
Is that
29 years.
different though? Let me look at this first.
Yeah, yeah.
$27.5.
All right.
There's something though for 7 years. I can't remember where it is.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I'll think about that.
But what you're talking about is 27.
Straight line depreciation.
But there's a 7-year rule on something else. That's kind of what it's for.
There's an investment rule, 7 years.
Maybe.
Money at a 12% return, money doubles in 7 years.
Yeah, but what you just said is 27.5.
Okay,
Is every state the same on that?
that's national.
Is it?
Okay, gang, we are now on chapters 15, and this is a short chapter. Not a big deal. So on page 293, unit 15, real estate taxes and other liens. Y'all want to tell y'all a little country story. Cause I hear people saying, this ain't fair and this ain't fair. And I used to be the same thing. I was a kid and young and this ain't fair. And then I finally figured out fairness ain't got a damn thing to do with anything in the world. But there was an old man, I say old man, 75, retired, him and his wife, both 75. And he had owned a little plumbing shop in this small town. And him and his wife had some property out in the country, had about 26 acres. And the back corner of his property grew the best watermelons in the whole county. He had nothing to do with it. You know, sometimes it's just the soil content, you know, like the Vidalia onions. Ain't got nothing to do with it, just the soil. And he had no idea why there happened to be some watermelons on the back corner, but there was. And nevertheless, he tended to them. And, you know, he's retired. He didn't need no money, but he would, you know, every Sunday he would go get the biggest, prettiest one, take it to church and give it to a new member, you know, or if somebody moved into town, you know, kind of like the welcome wagon. I don't know if y'all remember the welcome wagon. He'd give a new watermelon to a new person in town. He liked giving his new watermelons, But the last 3 Sundays in a row that he'd gone out to his watermelon patch, his best watermelon had been plucked, the one he'd been eyeing for the next week. And for a couple of weeks, it was a mystery. But then talking to his wife over an egg salad sandwich lunch one day, he said, "You know who it is taking my watermelon?" He said, "I bet it's the Petersons." Because there was a group of 5 or 6 young boys, all 14, 15 years old, and they'd cut a shortcut across the back corner of his property heading to this creek where there was a tire swing, and the kids used to like to jump off a high bluff, He said they probably snatching my best watermelon on their way to go have a big day, in the summer on a creek. And how are you gonna get mad at that? He was 14 and 15 at one time, so he wasn't angry at it. But damn it, he didn't want to keep losing his best watermelon. So he was trying to think of a cute but effective way to keep them boys from getting his best watermelon. So he put a sign up in the middle of the watermelon patch that said, "One of these watermelons has been poisoned." And he smiled all the way home thinking that'll get him. He showed up a week later and that sign had been replaced with a new sign that said, "Now 2 of these watermelons have been poisoned." Page 293, boy. Our learning objectives on the subject of real estate taxes and other liens. We're going to describe the characteristics of statutory and equitable liens. We're going to talk about general taxes and special assessment taxes, and then talk about some other stuff having to do with taxes. Let's turn the page. So we know what a lien is. A lien exists for one reason. I would love for anybody in my class to give me a guess at the reason a lien exists.
I know it, but I won't be right.
Yeah. It's just one simple reason. Yeah, if the lender can't have physical possession, they don't got that peace of mind they desire. So the lien is a legal instrument that came about to prevent the borrower from transferring ownership to the item in question without satisfying the balance at the time of the transfer. So there are 6 types of liens at the bottom of the page. And you know what? These are easy. I love it when the nerds try to nerd stuff up, but they don't do a good enough job, because when I can get it, I'm like, yeah, I want this back. Let's talk about general liens and specific liens. They're the opposite of each other. And all these liens can mix and mingle. I'll tell you how. A specific lien, you see that mentioned on the second paragraph, is one where they're specifically going to repossess what you stop making the payments on. Like your car loan lien is a specific lien. Your real estate lien, specific lien, they're gonna foreclose. But if I go rack up on a Sears credit card, I get me a lawnmower, I get me a bunch of tools, I get me a refrigerator and a bunch of cheap clothes. $5,000, we'll say. And I stop making the payments. You think Sears wants to repossess the cheap clothes, the refrigerator, the lawnmower, and the tools? No, they just want their 5,000. So that's a general. So we've got the first 2, easy peasy. Specific lien, they're going to specifically repossess. General lien, they just want their money. They don't want the objects. A vendor's lien is not one of the 6 liens that we're talking about right now, but since it's there, guys, anytime you hear vendor and vendee, I think I told you a week or 2 ago, anytime you hear vendor and vendee, those are the parties involved in an owner financing situation. Vendor Bob Lee, vendee Stephanie Kilpatrick. I reference people I went to grammar school with, my examples, they don't know. But yeah, what's a vendor? A seller, right? So anytime the people are identified as vendor or vendee, that's an owner financing scenario. And the fact that they refer to them as vendor or vendee may be the clue that you need as a detective to know this is owner financing, therefore this is what's true about this situation. Now, bottom paragraph, voluntary and involuntary, again, simple. If you voluntarily borrowed the money and a lien came about, it's a voluntary lien. So the lien on my car, a voluntary specific lien. The lien on my home, a voluntary specific lien. What's an involuntary lien, Mr. Yarborough? An example would be property tax lien. Guys, Alabama pays taxes in arrears. We're different. Most states pay in advance. We've already made that point. But regardless, see, nobody pays taxes voluntarily. Nobody. For all the people who are of a political persuasion that wants taxes raised, I say, do you voluntarily pay more than what's owed? They all say no. But they don't have a problem making me and you pay more. I'm becoming the old man. Getting mad at politics and at ghosts, in front of me. So a statutory lien, guys, I hope we've learned, if you didn't already know, that a statute is a lien, is a law. A law is a statute, is a law. They're interchangeable words. So a statutory lien is one that comes about as a result of law. So since we pay taxes in arrears, you can't trust that people will voluntarily pay the taxes that are owed whenever they close their home. So a lien comes against everybody in Alabama that owns real estate on October 1. Own your property. So that when you sell your property in March, that lien is going to kick in and capture the taxes owed. So we can say a statutory lien is an involuntary lien. Nobody voluntarily pays taxes. So the property tax lien on my home is an involuntary specific lien. Because if I don't pay my taxes, they're specifically going to take the house. So we've gotten general and specific down pretty easy. We referenced a vendor's lien. We've just now talked about a voluntary and involuntary. Now, and a statutory, we threw that in there. And now, I've already talked about a tax lien. So we're equitable lien, the last one, very bottom. Guys, they say, and I don't know this for a fact because I only have one language. I think we've got dual language people in this class. They say English is the most difficult language, one of the most difficult in the world to understand because we have so many words that have 4 or 5 meanings, like the word would, I would take you, or would, I cut up wood for fire, or, so many words with many different contexts. Well, equity, we know, is the difference between what you owe and what your property's worth. So if you sell it, you get that at the closing. Or you can borrow on it, pull it out, equity. But equity also means fairness. You may have heard an older man say, this would be an equitable situation for both you and I, Mr. Yarborough. In other words, he's saying this would be a win-win. Fair to you, fair to me. So, y'all, America don't put debtors in jail. Some countries do, but America don't. In America, you just got to live with the bad credit, okay? But as our forefathers were putting the country together, we thought, all right, we ain't gonna put debtors in jail, but we need to give the creditor the ability to recover the money, so they should be able to sue. So let's go back to Sears. I rack up the $5,000, I stop making the payments. The law says Sears has the right to sue me. And they win a money judgment in court against me for the $5,000 that I owe them. So now that judgment will converts into a lien, all right? So now we can say that lien from Sears is an involuntary, because I didn't voluntarily get sued and lose. It's an involuntary, equitable, we just explained why it's an equitable lien, The law says that they've got the right to pursue me. And it's a general lien, because they don't specifically want what I got with the 5,000. So it's an involuntary, equitable, general lien. So all these liens can mix and mingle. Like I'm a tall man, I'm a bald man, I'm a white man, I'm a southern man, but I'm all of those at the same time too. So page 295, effect of lien on title. It has a negative effect. If you're trying to sell your property and you ain't got that $5,000 to satisfy that Sears lien, then you can't sell your property. Unless you can find a buyer who's willing to pay the $5,000 lien for you. And if I like your property good enough, I'll pay the damn $5,000 lien. Can you see situations in life where the purchaser would have no problem walking in and handling your business? But that would be a unique situation. More often than not, that seller's just gonna have to sit on his house until he can get that lien off. And then he can put a sign up in front. But it has a negative effect. You could have the prettiest home in your neighborhood, in your town, got the beautification award in the front yard. You ever see those? Do they still do that in Birmingham? You know, I don't see those little signs anymore like I used to. You can have and it looked like Better Homes and Gardens inside. I mean, it's just beautiful. But if you've been sued left and right, and you got a bunch of judgments and a bunch of liens on your house, you can't sell it if you can't pay for them liens. That's why we call it marketable title. Marketable title means free of any liens, or at least those I haven't already told you about. Priority of liens, we talk about this. They reference it in every chapter. I don't know why. Priority of lien is established chronologically by when you record it. Turn the page. Yes, sir.
If you buy a piece of property with a lien attached to it, and that lien is attached to something that's not paid for, does that property also become yours? Does that make sense?
1 second. Embellish a little. Add something to that.
So if you bought a
The product, add that part.
if you bought a $30,000 piece of land.
Okay.
And there's a lien on that land because the owner owes $5,000 for a lawnmower. He didn't pay it, but he has it. Does that lawnmower become yours? Because you bought the lien with it.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, because if I'm the buyer, I'd be like, well, if I'm gonna get the lien, I want the damn lawnmower. You know, that's, I don't know what the law says, but I like the way you think
See
it.
what I'm saying?
Yeah, I love the way he's thinking.
I won't put-
He's saying, what if he's wanting to buy a $30,000 lot? And the owner of the lot's got a $5,000 lien on a riding lawnmower that he stopped making payments on, and they sued him. So my student said, okay, if I'm willing to, can I buy the property and inherit the lien and get the damn lawnmower? I don't know how the law addresses it, but I like his way of thinking. Because I'd ask the seller, if I'm gonna have to pay the lien, I want the lawnmower that goes with it. Just makes perfect sense. I don't know the answer to that. That's hilarious. That's a hustler's way of thinking, man. At the bottom of page 296, ad valorem tax, that is Latin for according to value. In America, everybody's taxes are relative to the value of your property. In some countries, the government just arbitrarily tells you what your taxes are. Ain't got nothing to do with nothing. Everybody on this street pays this much, even the guy with a big house and the guy with a little house. Now, guys, I didn't say we all pay the same amount of taxes. We pay the same rate, which makes it fair. And guys, that's a nugget from students. Just knowing what ad valorem is could get you a question right. That's a nugget from students. What does ad valorem mean? They'll have 4 answer choices, according to value. Now, property taxes, y'all, are one of the largest sources of revenue for government. And a lot of government factions got their hands in the pot of property tax money. You see at the top of page 297. Property taxes is funding a whole lot. Everybody got their hands in them. Every level of government, states, counties, municipalities, school districts, drainage, you can read. And who you see exempted from general taxes, I've never gotten a nugget about this, but I can see that being a legit question. Who might be exempted from general taxes? They're really kind of logical if you think about it. First of all, state and federal governments. Government ain't gonna pay government. All right, so government is naturally exempted. Hospitals, schools, churches. It makes sense when you think about it. You ain't gotta be a rocket science to understand why these would be exempted. Now, at the bottom of page 297, assessment. Bless her. Here, use this one until break. Oh, no.
I get it.
Yeah, I got you. No, I don't.
Okay.
You gotta get it.
I just threw it.
I think I did at one time too. You know, I'd see my assessed value and I'd go around telling people that's what my property is worth. And if you've done the same thing, quit it. Because they are indirectly loosely related, but they are not the same. Now, if a property was assessed annually, it would be updated, current, but they don't. The only time you can trust a tax assessment as far as the value of the property is when it's been sold recently, when there's been a transaction recently. So the records have been updated, but I've been in my house 20 years. All they do annually is ballpark, you know what I mean? They just kind of estimate. And trust me, the government's records are not as accurate as MLS records. So their ballparks are very rough. So yeah, if you've seen your assessed value and been telling people at house parties stuff based on that, quit. It better. On page 298, equalization. Guys, here's the thing. I'm about to tell y'all something. Schools get their money from property taxes. Now, a lot of people in here know Alabama pays the least amount of property taxes in the entire nation. It's a beautiful thing. I pay about $2,800 a year. That's what a friend of mine pays every damn month in Scottsdale, Arizona, on his house, property taxes. Literally $40,000 a year. Incredible. So yeah, you know, sometimes you don't look a gift horse in the mouth. When you don't have a frame of reference, you don't realize what things you've been taking for granted. Boy, we've got a lot of things in our favor in Alabama. But I think a lot of you have noticed that we tend to be at the bottom of the youngins' educational statistics. And now a lot of y'all are starting to do some math, or maybe you're not good at the math because of the education you got. You know, my boy comes home dragging his jaw home all the way home from school. You know, he's walking up the porch. I'm like, man, I wish the damn school would learn that boy up better. But don't let there come a property tax increase vote, because we don't vote no. We vote hell no. Because we want our cake and we want to eat it too. Y'all follow my thinking? We don't like being at the bottom of the educational statistics, but we ain't gonna vote for increased taxes. Now, you got state taxes as a baseline, everybody pays that, but every municipality is different. Have you ever noticed the municipalities with the best schools pay the most taxes? In some jurisdictions, they will not vote for tax increases to save their life, but they want better schools. So the government, you know, kowtows a lot. And there's an equalization factor to make up for the disparity between one tax district and another. I'll show you the mathematical potential question on equalization in just a minute. But let's talk about tax rates. And I want you to go to the bottom paragraph. That's the 5th paragraph under tax rates. Short arms. I don't know how you stand on them feet. Like little pegs. All right, y'all. Be with me on the 5th paragraph. The tax rate may be stated in a number of ways. In many areas, it's expressed in mills. I want you to highlight a mill is 1/1000th of a dollar. Don't highlight the .001, just 1/1000th of a dollar. You know, I've been hiccuping for years in class. I couldn't figure out why. When I teach, a student told me why, because you know why you hiccup? Not getting enough oxygen. So I'm talking so damn fast, I'm not getting oxygen, so. The ADHD guy just strayed for 2 seconds. Give me a break. Guys, I could tell y'all that $1's 4 quarters, it's 10 dimes, it's 2 quarters and 5 dimes. It's a million combination of quarter of change. Y'all see that? So let this paragraph be that. It says, it could be expressed 1/1000 of a dollar a mil, or tax rate may be expressed in mils per dollar, for instance, or in dollars per hundred, or in dollars per thousand. It could be 0.032 or 3.2% or 32 mils or 320 per 100. All of those are mathematically the same. I'm not going to show you now, but when I get to the end of this chapter, I'm going to go into the quiz and I'm going to show you how some of these math questions work themselves out. So tax bills, all right. We got to pay property taxes just like we got to pay everything. And the two big, as far as real estate, the two big bills are mortgage and tax. They'll take your property if you don't pay either one. They ain't gonna take your property if you don't pay your homeowners. They ain't gonna take your property if you don't pay your yard bill, you know, on your weeds. But taxes and mortgage, they take you home. So we've already talked about foreclosure. So right here on page 299, you see enforcement of tax liens. It works out so similarly to the foreclosure. So I want you to write page 226 in the left-hand margin because we're about to turn there. Not yet. Hell, let's turn there. 226. Guys, I've never gone, and I'm remiss in the fact that I've never gone, because I should have gone just for the educational experience, but I've never been to a property tax auction. Anybody in my class ever been to a property tax auction? Got one? I'm wishing I had been. I can't imagine. Great experience. And all the old men, I told y'all, that's who I hung out with when I was young. All the 50 and 60-year-old dudes, they were my pack. They were my crew, man. And my crew didn't hang out late, you know. So I had two crews. When the old crew went to bed, I went out with the young crew. But, you know, while I went out with the old crew, I get the favors, the wisdom, the direction, the learning. They pulled me along like a wagon. And they went to the tax sales. They would go monthly. It was a day. It was an event, kind of like getting on a van and going to Mississippi and going gambling. You know, it was an event for them. They liked to do it, and I never went. I wished I would have. So here's what's going to happen. In Alabama, your tax bills due at the end of the year. So let's say they don't get your bill by the due date. They're going to send you a letter, Mr. Yarber, you maybe have lost this, but here's your due date. And then, you know, 2 or 3 times, they'll give you a chance. If you ain't paid your bill and you're not responding to the letters or the phone calls, they're going to have an auction where your tax bill, not your property, your tax bill will be auctioned. Now, whether you understood me last week or not, I'm going to remind you one more time. Debt is a commodity in the business world. It is bought and sold amongst investors. Now, if I'm going to sell a debt, I'm going to sell it for less than what I'm owed, right? Because there'd be no reason somebody would want to buy my debt. You understand that? But sometimes 50 cents on the dollar is better than nothing. So that's why some people are willing to sell bad debt. You know, Sears might sell a $5,000 bad debt for 20 cents on the dollar to a debt collection firm, because 20 cents on the dollar is better than nothing, you know? So debt is bought and sold. So finally, I get a letter, Mr. Yarber, your tax bill, your tax debt's going to be auctioned on August 13th. So look at the timeline for the foreclosure. It works just like this timeline, y'all. Data default. I get the letter, Mr. Yarber. You ain't responded to us, so we're going to sell your tax bill on a certain day. That's when I get the letter. They set, you see in the middle of the timeline, that's the day that the tax bill is going to be auctioned. If I can scrape up the money and go pay the state off before the auction takes place, I took advantage of my equitable right of redemption. To get 2 questions right, You're gonna have to know equitable right of redemption is before the sale. Statutory right of redemption is after the sale. But anyway, here we go. So the auction takes place. Here's what I've been told is a nugget question on the exam. What do you think the opening bid, in an auction, in the tax auction is? Who said that? God bless you. And she's not even confident. The amount of the debt. Would it not be silly as hell for the state of Alabama to auction your tax debt off for less than what was owed? It would be dumb. So the amount the state is owed is the opening bid. All right. So if I owe the state 1,200, we're going to start the bidding off at 1,200. Do I have 1,200? I have 1,200 over here. Do I have 12,100? I have 12,100 over here. And we go. But that's a nugget. That would be an easy question. Guy, I've given you permission to miss the hard questions. That's what test takers are supposed to do. Miss the hard ones. Only the nerds get the hard ones. We're supposed to we can't miss the gimmies. And that would be a gimme. Plus the opening bid of a tax auction, the amount owed. So let's say I win the bid. Why would I bid on a tax debt as an investor? Because I get an interest rate on top. I don't know what it is, but it's usually anywhere from 11 to 13%. And I don't know how your investing experience is. That's a pretty damn fair return. 11%, pretty fair. And just like foreclosure, unlike foreclosure, I don't get the property. That's why I have told you the bill is being auctioned. Yes, dear. Oh. Trying to do something nice and you're screwing stuff up. But once the tax bill is auctioned for, I no longer owe the state, I owe this person. I owe them what they auctioned it for plus an interest rate. Now, I get a redemption period, just like in foreclosures. You see, you got a redemption period after the sale. I get a redemption period. You don't need to know it, but it's, yeah, or if the state buys it 5 years, but yes, you do get a fairly long right of redemption usually compared to foreclosure. And honestly, rarely do people lose their property because they don't pay their tax bill. Because, a tax bill is overcomable more often than not. But some people do, like rich people owning big buildings with a $42 million tax bill. Now, that's the kind of tax bill you'll lose a property over. But residential homes, rarely do you lose your property over a little tax bill. But let me continue. So I've won the auction. The taxpayer now owes me. They get to stay in the property during the right of redemption. Now, once the right of redemption expires, now I can have them removed from the property, and now I got me a house. I think you told me about an occasion. Rarely do people score and get a whole property because the right of redemption expired. More often than not, people are going to pay their tax bill. But every now and then you get lucky on the pull of a slot, you never know. And in the meantime, I made a fair return. And if I do 10 auctions a damn month, I could rack up a little portfolio. So here's the illustration, but let's turn back to page. Thank you, 299. So here's what I want you to know. We're on the page with enforcement of tax liens. So you see in the first paragraph, you don't have to highlight that, but it's called a tax sale. And the second paragraph, I want you to highlight the italics. I do not receive a deed when I win the auction. I receive a certificate of sale. That is an answer to a question, damn it. I receive a certificate of sale. Now, in the next paragraph, when the right of redemption expires, I receive a tax deed, sometimes called a sheriff's deed. You know why they sometimes called a sheriff's deed? Because once the right of redemption expires, I can have the sheriff remove you from the property. It's now my property. Huh? Me individually?
I mean, yeah, technically you are.
I'd let the sheriff do it. It would, well, bless her heart. She said, Mark, you would put a family out. You know, maybe that's why I don't buy tax deeds, because my heart's too big. Yeah, I could put their ass up. Cause anytime I've had bad breaks with that, ain't nobody giving me a break. Not one damn time. But yeah, let's walk away from this knowing that there's gonna be twice. I need to know equitable or statutory right of redemption. And honestly, that ain't trigonometry. That's just a matter of you remembering that. All right, over here on page 300. Special assessments and local improvement district taxes. And you know the reason I'd want to do tax auctions? And you know what? I'm just now realizing as I'm talking to you, I'm the age of those old men that I used to hang out with. Why am I asked going to the courthouse when the tax auction's down? I'm gonna write something down. Me and my buddy Frank gonna start doing some tax auctions. My God. I'm making up my mind right now. I'm old. So my next class will get to hear some experience. At the top of page 300, special assessments, local improvement district taxes. You know, let's say you live on a dirt road and they come in and pave. Anybody live here on a dirt road? Got one person living on a dirt road. They come in and pave it. There's a cost. Or maybe you live on a paved road, no curb, they come in and curb it. Maybe you live on a paved curb road, they come in and put sewer. Maybe they come and put a walking sidewalk. Maybe they put a bike trail. Maybe they come in and put new street lights, light up the neighborhood. There's a cost to that. And the government assumes the lion's share of the cost, but they're going to take about half the cost and pass it on to the people that benefit. The thinking is your property value is going to increase as a result of the improvement, so they want you to have some skin in the game. Now, what they do is they take the total cost, prorate it by square foot, and relative to the amount of square feet your lot is, that's what your share of the assessment bill would be. Now, when I receive my assessment bill as a taxpayer, I got the option of paying it in full or paying it over time. What do you think most people choose? Paying it over time. So it's terribly usual in a sale at the closing, there's a balance on that special assessment. It's got to be addressed. Can the buyer assume the special assessment? It would be dependent upon the people involved. Lenders have a lot of say, y'all. And if the lender won't allow it, then people don't allow it because seller wants somebody to buy their house. So the seller will pay by the lender's rules. Like, remember we talked about general deeds, statutory deeds, you know, quitclaim deeds. Do you know why most people have a general warranty deed? Because the lender requires the seller to convey to the purchaser a general warranty deed. And the seller don't got no choice. So point being is very often the lender will not allow their borrower to assume the balance on a special assessment. They'll force the seller to pay the balance out of their proceeds. I don't know if any of that's on the exam. I'm just trying to tell you as much as I know about it to give you a well-rounded understanding. Guys, again, when you're outside of class studying, some of this stuff, even though you may have not had a personal experience based on my explanation and the words in the book, I can see how that works. You know, you can get it, right? But some things you just can't wrap your brain around it. I see the words, but I can't. Legal actions involving tenants in common versus joint tenants. You know, because when you can see the Johnsons, Sewer, and the Smiths, it comes alive. You know what I mean? I can see the real life. I understand it more. And the theory, it was difficult, but now I get the real life. But you know, when you vacuum, sometimes you come from the side, sometimes you come from this side, sometimes you come from the front. Sometimes I'll use 5 or 6 sets of search terms. before I'm satisfied, you know? But find a scenario. Why, what happens if I don't pay my special assessment to the county? Write that, you know, pay that. I just got a special assessment in my subdivision. What does this mean? Pretend you're not a student. Ask the question like a real person in a real situation would. Don't ask it academically. You'll be amazed at some of the solutions you get, some of the answers that, they turn lights on in dark rooms. If you got kinfolk, I hate saying that, it makes me sound like Abe, not Abe, but Buddy Epson. If you got relatives that are anywhere in the business, maybe they work for the government, maybe they work at the courthouse, maybe they're attorneys, call your uncle, your second cousin, your friend, and say, I'm in a real estate licensing class. Have you got 30 minutes? You know, you can give old cuz and sit there and talk to them on the phone. What does this mean? You know, bullet things out that you want to talk about in that conversation. Work the sources you need to work so that 1 year down the road, when someone says, you know, I failed that exam twice. How did you pass it? What did you do? Your answer is going to be what the hell I had to do. Because what you got to do to pass is different than what you got to do. And what you got to do to pass is different than what you got to do. We're all different. If this ain't coming to you good and you see it when you take the quizzes and you still don't increase your studying, you're just a damn fool. That's all you are. Moving down the page 300. We're not going to take our 10-minute break, okay? We're going to finish. I'm almost done. So other liens, and these are some liens we've talked about. Mortgage lien, we know what that is. It's a specific voluntary lien. Now, a mechanics lien, we're learning about. You will have a question on a mechanics lien. Guys, check this out. What if I own a home, but it's mortgaged to the hilt? And I'm also a gambler. They say, and I don't know if y'all know this, I need to start talking to younger people. They say kids are in trouble, fellas, gambling. Online college, they say there's college kids, 22 years old, $100,000 in debt, college debt, because they just get carried away. They're just kids, for God's sakes. And kids are dumb as hell. That's what you're supposed to be when you're a kid. Do y'all know people like that? Young buck on the back. Y'all know kids, young kids in trouble with debt? You do? Y'all just, you know, when somebody asks you, you go, y'all know what teachers rely on in order to move forward? Faces. When I see, I go, I can move forward. But when I go, I think, damn, I got to give him a second example. Then I give it, and I look at him. Damn, I got to give a third example. If y'all are getting tired of hearing the examples because you understand, then give me some face. But y'all, what if I'm a gambler and I'm $50,000 in hock, and none of my friends or family will lend me money? My credit cards are maxed out, and my bookie's threatening to take my left leg if I ain't got the money in 6 weeks. So I stay up all night trying to come up with a solution in my brain. I think I've got to improve my house. I'm going to have to improve the kitchen, put some hardwoods, increase the value, 50,000, sell it, get the difference between my mortgage balance and the increased value. Boom, I get out of hock. But you know who I don't pay in that scenario? The contractors that did the work. They're the ones that gave me the increased value, got me out of hock, saved my left leg, but then they're the ones that got this shaft. I don't pay them. That began to happen. So often the law came up with a mechanics lien. This is a specific tied to the home. Involuntary, the person ordering the work to be done is not doing the lien, the mechanic. So mechanic is a fancy word for persons or companies that perform labor or furnish material to improve real property. It's available to contractors, subcontractors, architects, equipment lessors, surveyors, laborers, or other providers. So up here at the top of page 301, in the second paragraph, if you're behind me a couple of inches, I'm on the second paragraph under mechanics lien. Go to the third line and highlight the sentence, a person claiming a mechanics lien will file notice of lien in the county where the property is located. So I want you to know that. Why is that important, Mr. Yarborough? That seems commonsensical to me. Y'all, a lot of contractors come from out of town. I'm from Jefferson County, Alabama, but my company got me doing work in Mobile. I'm not gonna file my mechanics lien where I'm from in Jefferson County. I'm gonna have to file it down there in Mobile County, all right? So a lot of this you think, why, that's insulting. No, they can pose it in a way that gets you all confused, so it's common sense. And then the last sentence on the next paragraph. Mechanics liens will be given priority over previously recorded liens, you know, because they are ultimately the ones that got the shaft. So that's the thinking behind why the courts give the mechanics lien priority. So filed in the county where the property is located, not where the contractor's from. And then it's given priority. It's a strong lien. So y'all, at the bottom of page 301, I'll let y'all keep writing. I mean, judgment, we know what a judgment is. I get sued. A judgment comes against me. And a judgment turns into a lien, like milk turns into clabber. Anybody have a country daddy? I remember coming home from vacation, the milk had clabbered. Y'all know what that means in the refrigerator? I started to throw it away. My daddy said, "Don't you throw that away." He was eating that with cornbread that night. What in the hell was wrong with country people?
You
Are
can
there-
put it in the cheese.
I got one of them in here. You would eat that.
I don't eat that, but you can take that process and turn it into cheese.
I like that. But y'all know, y'all got relatives that would eat clabbered milk in the refrigerator with cornbread or something? That just. It's like, Daddy, what'd you eat that clabbered milk with? Brains and eggs. Country people crack me up. And I'm country as cornbread. I don't know why I'm talking about country people, you know, but nevertheless, hey, we know what a judgment is. Over here on page 302, Liz Pendens. Did I tell y'all what that was already? I got one person nodding their head. Look at me. Tell me what Liz Pendens means. Retention, y'all. Just because you remember it, here's what Liz Pendens is. Didn't we agree that when you buy a house, I become responsible from liens from previous owners that can rear their ugly head? Yeah. And we talked about that title insurance will usually come to your rescue. And why do most people have title insurance? Because they got to borrow money and they don't have a choice. But if I'm paying cash for real estate, I got a choice. So instead of going to pay cash for a title insurance policy, I go to the courthouse to do my own research. And when I'm looking up the property, I'm wanting to see if there are any liens on it because I'm about to pay cash. And then on the fish machine in the courthouse, figuratively speaking, that don't really happen. A red flag pops up. Liz Pendens. Hey, Mark, be careful. The dude that owns the property you're thinking about buying is in the courtroom right now. He's involved in a pending lawsuit and a judgment could come about within the next week or two. Could you imagine me checking on the courthouse for liens on January 13th? Don't see any, and I feel good about buying it. So I show up at the closing a week later on January 20th and I pay cash. Little did I know, between the 13th and the 20th, dude lost in court and they hauled ass to the courthouse and filed a lien in between here and here. Do you see where I'm coming from? So the Liz Pendens says, Mark, there ain't no lien that we know of, but we know that the owner of the property is involved in a pending lawsuit. In other words, whenever there's a lawsuit going on, the attorneys have to file Liz Pendens so that it pops up for anybody checking on you or anything you own. That Liz Pendens notice pops up to let anybody be forewarned that a judgment can come about real soon in the near future. An attachment ain't never going to be an answer to a question, but it'll be offered as a wrong answer choice. In the left-hand margin, put freezing assets. Everybody's heard of that, ain't you? Let's say I get a letter from the IRS. Mr. Yarborough, we've determined that you misreported your taxes from the years 2021 through 2023. In fact, you owe us $42,000 in taxes. They send me 3 letters. I don't respond to any of them. And then one day in Arby's, they decline all my credit cards. Well, so I go to the teller, they eat my card. The ATM eats my card. The IRS has frozen my assets. Do you know why they froze my assets? People that are involved in litigation that they know they're gonna lose, they try to sell off their assets to their friends and family during the law litigation. So at the end in court, when they lose, they look across the courtroom and go, I ain't got nothing. Trying to have the last laugh. Well, the IRS is hip to this ploy, so they're gonna freeze them because they want there to be something when they win. Don't get me wrong, if they lose, they have to unfreeze them. But attachment's the nerd word, freezing is the my and your word. Estate inheritance taxes, liens for municipal utilities. Y'all have a friend that works for, manages a Super Walmart. Any Super Walmart managers in here? Y'all know what a Super Walmart, power bill is monthly? About 75,000. I love stupid facts like that. That's a hell of a power bill, man, ain't it? Bail bond lien, corporate franchise tax lien. You know what's tripping me out? And again, I ain't getting political. You can hate Trump like Trump. I ain't telling you what I like him or hate him. But you see how they're raising hell over his $176 million bond in New York? Y'all do know that they let a guy out who had been in jail, served 10 years, no cash bail, and then he killed somebody and dismembered them and put their parts of their body all over the city. So they won't make that guy pay bail, but they busted Trump's kahoonies. Like he gonna dismember people, you know? Nevertheless, I just had to throw that in. Sorry. You didn't like. And the IRS tax lien. Here's a question on the exam. And this surprised me as a student, y'all. I told you, when me and you belly up financially, the IRS is going to take our non-exempted assets, sell them, and then invite all the people that suffered, you know, from your financial ruin to come. But it ain't a first come, first serve. Remember, you establish your position in line chronologically whenever you record your lien. The IRS does not get priority over anybody. They got to get in line with Sears and J.C. Penney's and Chase Manhattan on your Visa. They got to get in line with everybody. That surprised me. But you know who does get in front of everybody? The state. If I owe the state of Alabama any money, the state is going to be first in line at all times. But the IRS, they aren't given any priority. That really amazed me as a student. I was very surprised by that. And yes, you will have that question. You will have that question on the exam. So y'all, it's 1 o'clock and I know y'all probably want to get out early. Let's do our 15 minutes. We're getting toward the end, y'all. We're going to dot I's and cross T's, get out a little bit of studying in, huh?
Can the IRS implement a mechanics lien?
Well, they're not contractors improving a property. If you read the very first sentence under a mechanics lien, is a specific involuntary lien giving security to persons who perform labor to improve real property.
But I mean, if the federal government is like on a park or something, comes in and it's not paid.
Oh, by the municipality?
Yeah.
Man, I got a damn thinker in my class. I don't know, but I'm gonna look that up. That's interesting. Yeah, that was a very high level question. I'm not even gonna tell y'all what he said. It'll make y'all smoke coming out of y'all's ears. But yeah, let's do our 15 minutes. I'm gonna pull up my fancy app. My virtual students, hell, they already gone. They going. I mean, they're doing the 15 minutes. Y'all virtual students better not be checking out right now. I hear somebody call my name. Give me a second. You may begin. Hold on, virtual students. Let me cancel this. I told you I was gonna help y'all with some of the math on this, and I am, so let's get in here. Let's turn to page 306. I'm gonna do two questions for you. Look at question number 9. No, I'm gonna do 9 second. Question number 6. All right. In a property tax question, where they're wanting me to determine the taxes owed, I need assessed value. Now, listen to me real quick before you write something down. You remember when we were talking about mortgages and I said there's no closing cost based on purchase price? There is closing cost based on loan amount. And sometimes they won't give you the loan amount. They'll give you the purchase price and the LTV and force you on paper to determine the loan amount. That's the thinking here. You need assessed value. Think of assessed value as loan amount. Sometimes there'll be a question, they'll give you market value and the assessed rate, and I've got to take those two to arrive at assessed value. So I want you to equate assessed value to loan amount. Let's do this question. A parcel of real estate has a market value of 160. I don't do taxes based on market value. I need assessed value. Some questions, they'll give you assessed value, take it and run with it. Some questions, they give you market value and assessed rate and make you arrive at assessed value. This is one of those. So it's assessed for tax purposes at 75% of market value. Well, so far, this is easy. So the assessed value of this property, guys, and look, I hope you're realizing assessed value has nothing to do with market value. It's a formula that determines your taxes. Y'all see where I got this, where I'm at so far? I need this to get the answer to the question, not this. The tax rate for the county in which the property is located is 40 mills. Now, 9 out of 10 times in the country, this is going to be how the assessed value is arrived at using a mill rate. Now, I don't expect you to remember, but I'm going to remind you. You highlighted earlier in this chapter that a mill is 1/1000th. Didn't you? You remember that? So I'm going to take assessed value. Y'all, this is a 5th grade math. This is probably 3rd grade math. I'm going to take assessed value and divide by 1,000. Why am I dividing by 1,000? Because they use a mill. So I get 120. And then I just multiply times the number of mills. How many mills are in this question? So the annual taxes on this property are $4,800. Okay? Even though this is your first time to do it, and even though it takes repetition to be comfortable with something, you got to admit that's pretty damn easy. Market value times assessed rate. Now, here's what could make this harder. Y'all, virtual students, I'm going to take my face out of this. I need some extra white space. They could say, instead of saying 40 mills, like this question said, they could say the assessed value is $4 per $100 of value, okay? So in one question, they said 40 mills. In the next question, they say $4 per $100 of value. So watch this, y'all. Over here, I take the market value of 160. I multiply it times 75% to get the assessed value, 120. Now, right here, we divided 120,000 by 1,000. Why did we divide by 1,000? Because we use mills. Now, what would you deduce? What would you think? Then I'm going to divide the 120,000 by this time. Just look at the facts provided and make a guess. By 100. Yeah. See, instead of 1,000, 100. So what do you think I get? Watch this, y'all. 1,200. And then what am I going to multiply the 1,200 times? 4. And what do you get? 4,800. It's the same crap, different way of arriving. So more than likely, the tax question, the assessed rate will either be a mill, and that's where I divide it by 1,000, or it will say $4 per $100 of value. And that's where I do the market value times the assessed rate to arrive at assessed value. And then assessed value time divided by 100. Why? Because of per $100 of value. And then I take that and multiply it times 4. Now, here's what I want you to be careful of. Let's read number 6 again. A specific parcel of real estate has a market value of $160,000, is assessed for tax purposes at 75% of market value. The tax rate for the county in which the property is located is 40 mills, period. Let's stop right here. The next sentence is where they will put some trickery in. The tax bill will be, they didn't put no trickery in there, but what if they had put the monthly tax bill will be? And your calculator comes up with 4,800. They'll have 4,800 as choice A, but that ain't the answer. What's the answer? 4,800 divided by 12, the answer is 400. So you got to pay attention to that last part, or they'll slip in the quarterly tax bill will be. What would I do with that 4,800? Divided by 4. Now, if they say semi-annual, I didn't know what that meant. That means twice a year. I thought biannual was twice a year, but apparently semi-annual is too. So if they say the semi-annual tax bill will be divided by 2, but always look for them to alter the unit right there at the end. That's where they try to trick you. All right. So I hope you feel okay with number 6. Now let's do number 9. I told y'all that I said, you know, some tax districts, they will never vote for more taxes, but damn it, they want better schools. So the government will, they created the equalization factor to address the disparity. Let's show you how to do it. Here we go. Number 9, let me pull up the whiteboard. So what's the annual real estate tax on a property valued at $135,000? That's market value. And is assessed for tax purposes at $47,250. You know what they just told us? That this is irrelevant. Don't mean a damn thing. In fact, the nerds that write multiple choice questions call this a distractor. Because what did I tell you we need to do a tax question? Assess value. They gave it to us. All right. So the assessed value is $47,250. With an equalization factor of 125%. We're going to put that aside for right now. We don't need to know it. Guys, and when you see their formula in the book for how they tell you how to do all these, it ain't as easy as I do. Nerds take simple math. You know, remember when they had the kids doing that common math? What was that crap a few years ago? Remember how they take a simple math question and just make it a page damn long? So watch this. They're using a mill. So what am I going to do with this 47,250? Divide by what? 1,000. I think I got 5 different answers just then. And God bless you for saying something. I don't care if you got the wrong answer. I will give the biggest cookie to the cat with the wrong answer. I'll give the smallest cookie to the cat with the right answer. But yeah, a mill. is 1/1000. A mil is 1/1000. A mil is 1/1000. So if they use a mil, I divide the assessed value by 1,000. I get 4725. What am I going to multiply times 4725 by? Bingo. And when I do that, I get 47.25 times 25. I'm gonna bring it up here. I get 1181 and a quarter. Do they have an answer choice for that? They do, but that ain't the answer. Now's where the equalization factor comes in. So just remember, if you have an equalization factor, do it out normal. And then at the very end, take your final answer and multiply it times 125%. And then that gives me the answer of, I think it's 1477. So this times 125%. Yep, 1477. Now, again, this question right here, if it said, instead of 25 mils, if it said $2.50 per $100 of value, I would do 47,250 and divide by 100. And with that, I get $472.50. And then I multiply that times $2.50, and I would get the same thing. So again, a mil divided by 1,000. If it's $2.50 per 100, you divide by 100. So those are the two math. I'm going to make you do the rest now. You may begin. And you can skip those two or do them for repetition if you want. And we're only going to give you 12 minutes.
See y'all tomorrow.
Get another one. I keep forgetting to get it.
All right, one second,
No,
one
sorry
second.
about that. Oh, yeah.
All right, virtual students, we've had a big day. So, y'all, do what you gotta do till tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Get some studying in. We'll see y'all tomorrow at 10 a.m. Tomorrow, we're doing 16 and 17, okay? So we'll see you in the morning. You got it.